Restaurant Unstoppable. Inspire, empower, and transform the industry. With excitement, allow me to introduce to you today's guest, co-owner of Guerrilla Tacos and owner of Tiago, founder, owner of GoGo's Tacos, Brittney. Valles. Brittney, are you feeling unstoppable today?
I am so feeling unstoppable. Yes. Today's the most unstoppable
And you got a lot going on. I'm really excited for today's conversation because not all my guests take over businesses.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's a really interesting angle.
Right.
And one of my listeners calls you out, specifically Guerrilla Tacos, to be a guest on the show. I can't remember the name of the person who called me out. I have it written down somewhere, but if you're listening, if you're that person, we made it happen, and I'm excited to have you here. I cannot wait to dive into who you are and how you got here. But let's get that motivational, inspirational ball rolling with a success quote or mantra. What do you got for us?
Yeah, mine is, and it might have been said a million times already, but it's so valid. Mine is fake it till you make it. So simple, but definitely as somebody's quite young, as a leader in this industry, it's definitely the daily, like, all right, just pretend.
Yeah. So what do you mean by fake it? You don't really mean like actually like fake it.
No, I mean like, there are things. When I was signing the lease for the first Guerrilla Taco location, I was 23 years old. And I was like super fresh out of college, not super fresh, but now I'm like getting older. So I'm like, oh, that's so young. And there were so many words I didn't understand, so many turns and phrases. So I would leave meetings being like, okay, yeah, I totally know what you mean. And then I would immediately go home and like highlight all the terms and phrases I don't understand, Google it, put it in a notes app so that if it ever came up again, I 100% knew. So, not ever letting anybody feel like they had any reason to not have confidence in me. I think that's what I mean a little bit more. And even here we've been a physical restaurant for 4 years. So I was 25 when we actually opened, and I'm 29 now. And so even in the last 4 years, even in the last like 3 months, I have learned so much about being a leader. And sometimes I like think about the past decisions and I shake my head at myself.
Well, maybe some of those decisions will come out and we can learn from them together.
Yeah.
But this idea of just faking it till you make it, like you're never going to have all the answers. You're never going to know everything.
No.
And if you were waiting to get to this point where you have to give yourself permission to be this expert to get started, then you're never going to start. Yeah. You just have to start and recognize that you don't have all the answers and that they will come to you, and you get to learn through doing. Right?
Yeah. And it's 2022. So all the resources are at your fingers, right? So there's really no reason to ever go into many things unprepared, because if you wanted to do a thing, you could YouTube, you can go on Reddit, you can go on TikTok these days. I'm so young and hip.
And crazy, ironically enough, in 2011, 2012, when I wanted to start this podcast, I started because it wasn't there. The people in this industry weren't doing that sort of thing yet, sharing it. So, but now there's so many resources out there, and there's really no excuse. If you want to learn, then it's really you're the only thing in your way. Yeah. Right.
100%.
Great way to get this thing started. So where does it make sense to start sharing your story? How did you get to where you are today, and where did you start?
Yeah, we can start in like 2015, which was now 7 years ago, which is kind of crazy. Or maybe 2014, 2013, actually. I thought I was going to be a corporate lawyer. And so I was going to school for that. I was going to Whittier College, which has a 3-2 program. So you do 3 years of undergrad and 2 years of law school. And I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to be a lawyer. Look at me go. And then I started working at a law firm, and I was like, this sucks. It like majorly sucked, because I was going to school and I was like doing paperwork all day at school. Then I would go to the law firm and like file documents and like pleadings and all that stuff. And I was like, I hate this. So I was crying to my little boyfriend at the time, like, oh, I'm so miserable. And he was like, why don't you just do something in hospitality so you can go to school and then you can go like do something fun? Because hospitality is honestly fun, especially when you are like a server or a runner or busser or whatever. I recently had a dream that I was a server at a cheesecake factory. It was like the best dream ever.
Do you know that we just came from interviewing the chief culinary officer of the Cheesecake
Oh
Factory?
my gosh, that's amazing.
What are the odds?
I want to hear about that. I can't wait to listen.
Well, we recorded.
Okay. That's super exciting. I talk about the Cheesecake Factory all the time. I'm obsessed. But I had a dream that I was recently a server at the Cheesecake Factory because, you know, you get to be a server and you have your inter-server love. And that was like my whole dream. And I was so happy in that dream. So I was definitely looking for something like that.
Usually when people dream about the restaurant industry, it's a nightmare.
I know.
I think Sam might have had a dream recently. He was telling me about, our videographer behind us. So in my research, I saw that you got your first star, and correct me if I'm wrong, 2012, Handsome Coffee and Roasters.
Yeah.
So this is before this realization that you had.
Well, it was like around then. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Cause I was just a barista. Right.
Yeah.
So like that, I wasn't in any leadership position, though. I was super bossy. I feel really bad. Everybody that worked for me, worked with me. I said for me. How embarrassing.
I know.
And it's funny because any of the baristas you talked that worked with me around like 2013, 2012 would be like, she was so bossy, but I've always had that problem. And
Born
I was
to be
like,
a boss,
I know. And I was like, not even 21. I was so like, the world is my oyster. I know all the things. It was terrible. And so, you know, I was like a barista and I was loving it. I really enjoyed the work. My grades improved like tenfold because I was able to like talk to people all day, making them coffee. And one day, as I was like getting ready to graduate, just like 2-3 years later, I was like, I need to like figure out something else to do. But I knew I didn't want to go behind a desk again. So I had some like job offers for like more corporate things, like with HBO or with BuzzFeed. And I was like trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I used to serve coffee to Bill Chait, who was a restaurateur. He originally was one of the owners of like Bestia and Valles and Republique, and Sprout Group was like his main thing. He doesn't really do that anymore, but that was what he was doing. And I would talk to him because I'd make him coffee. And I was like, oh my God, I want to work at one of his restaurants. So I got a job as a host for Petty Cash, and there I was like a host for like 2 months, and they were like, oh my God, you're so talented. I was like, right?
No. Tell me something I don't know.
No, I know. No, they just saw my resume and was like, oh, you graduated with a degree in human resources. Do you want to help us in the office? That's actually how that happened. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And so from there, I like was pretty much off the floor. I would occasionally be on the floor. But I was like helping a lot in the office. I finished up my degree, and like I'm getting old now. So like all the timing is like, wait, what happened first? What happened second? But all this stuff happened.
Yeah.
And I wanted to like do something else because I was so used to like working full time and going to school. So I was like, I have all the time in the world. I got to figure something else out. So I started my own little business, which I called the Beekeepers. So it's like so embarrassing, that name. Or is it? I don't know.
Perfect.
So I would do people's books and like help them with like their cash counting system or their reconciling system, help them like set up their business structures, things like that. So I had like a couple of clients, like a handful of clients, and I knew Chef Wes from back in the day because my high school sweetheart worked with him at La Comptoir when it was still a pop-up. And so I approached him as, you know, him being one of my clients, and he was like, honestly, I can't afford you. And I was like, you know what? I really believe in what you're doing. I think your food is really delicious. Like, I will do it for like dirt cheap. And I did for a while, for like 5 or 6 months. And then he asked me to partner with him on like a more official level as like a co-owner of Guerrilla. And I accepted, and I was incredibly young. So he definitely took a chance on me. And from there, you know, I really focused on that and kind of retired my business. It was very short-lived. But I really was working with Petty Cash and Chef Walter Mansky, and then also with Wes. So I was doing double duty. And eventually around 2016, 2017, Guerrilla got to the point where I could work there full time and really start fundraising for the brick and mortar, start doing project managing for the construction, all that jazz. And that really took off and consumed me. And my real contribution with Guerrilla, and the thing that I really enjoyed to do the most, is actually the catering side of it, because it was a truck. And so, you know, being able to add that contribution really made me feel like super a part of the growth of the business.
You dropped a lot on us, but this is exactly what I like to do, is to get the kind of the big picture, cruise at 30,000 feet, get in the helicopter thereafter, and like hover over these stages. And really drill down into what you learned. So all the way back to 2012, you're working at Handsome Coffee Roasters. You meet Bill Chait.
Yeah.
Did you know who he was when you first walked in the
No,
door?
not at all. And he didn't start coming maybe till like 2013, 14, because so I didn't know who he was, but I went to like this party and people were like, oh yeah, Bill Chait comes into, Handsome all the time. And I was like, who is he? And I Googled him and then I was like, oh yeah, and he wouldn't talk. He was very shy. And so that was like my personality. I'm like, I'm going to crack this nut wide open. And so eventually like he would talk to me a little bit more. But yeah, no, I did not know who he was at all. I grew up eating like Olive Garden, so I didn't know restaurants.
So how did you crack that nut?
I think I don't know. How did I do it? I just didn't give him a chance to say no or to not talk to me, or I don't even remember. Oh my gosh, how embarrassing.
Well, what I'm curious about is, you won him over.
Yeah.
Right? He offered you a job. So how do you approach people you admire, and how do you tell them you admire them, and how do you get to that point where they open up and start sharing things with you? And like basically, he was your first like industry mentor. Is it safe to say?
I wouldn't say that because our interactions were like 2 seconds over coffee, giving him coffee, but like he was definitely like my first idol, I would say. Like I was like, oh my God, he's so cool. But we never, beyond that, we didn't really work too closely together because he had so much going on, right? So I was just his like little barista, but he definitely was the first person in the restaurant industry that was like, oh, this is like totally not what I understood about what it is to run restaurants. Because at the time, I really went to Cheesecake Factory and Olive Garden and Chili's and Chipotle. Like I didn't know about these like small independent cool restaurants and cool chefs, and like I didn't know at all. And so like looking into him, I was like, oh wow, like he finds these chefs and he gives them like a platform. This is super cool. I had no clue that you could do like you can have multiple restaurants that are also different.
Yeah.
No clue.
Yeah.
And I was like,
only corporations and franchises.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I hope that we do fragment the big chains and like we compete with them and inject a little more soul into the industry. But what were some of the biggest lessons? I know you were asking him questions.
Yeah.
What was in this period of you just asking him questions? What was the one thing that you remember that stuck with you the most? Is there anything?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so funny because it's like super random. He talked to me a lot about food costs because particularly at Petty Cash, we had some items that were super duper expensive and some items that were as a restaurant they were expensive, right? And some items that were not as expensive. And I was like, how does the math of that work out when this item is a 30% food cost and this item is like 10%? Like how does that work out? And he was like, it's all about your servers. It's all about the mix, making sure that some of those like higher ticket items are on the ticket, and making sure that even if they have this delicious thing that maybe we take a loss on, but they're willing to get like 10 other things, it's all about the mix of like what that guest experience is at the end. And so, yeah, you might take a loss, but it's worth it. That might have been a little roundabout. But
no, it was perfect. it was a great
But
lesson.
that really like stuck with me because I was like, yeah, like because sometimes it's really, we're not corporate, right? Independent restaurants are not corporate, obviously. And sometimes it is like you want to serve something super delicious, but you're like, oh my God, if I serve this, it's going to have to be like $60 or something. But you're willing to take the loss on it. That's a big lesson, especially here. I'm willing to take the loss on it so long as like, we get a margarita on the table.
Yeah.
We get some chips and guac on the table. Some other things that
So that
help.
item is a big flashy thing, but it's draw, right?
Right.
It draws people in.
Right.
And you're going to lose money maybe on that thing. But like you said, as long as you have other items supporting cast members
Right.
around that item to make up for your loss, in
Right.
the end, you win.
Yeah.
Right?
Right. Because we're selling the second visit.
Analogy here, and this works all over the place in life because you recognize when you have this opportunity with Chef Wes that you might have to take a loss up front.
Yeah.
But in the long term, this is going to open up opportunities for you. It's going to set things up for you to sell other things that you wouldn't have had a chance to, right? So it's a maybe that was kind of a leap of but it's the idea like you don't have to win every time.
Yeah.
You know?
That is something, I feel like I'm going to sound like Kim Kardashian. You know, she's like, people don't want to work anymore. Have you seen that?
No.
Oh my God.
But it sounds right.
Yes.
It sounds very true.
Yeah, she was like, I mean, she's getting like drugged through the mud because obviously she's Kim Kardashian. And that's a little tone deaf. But there is something that I learned very young that I feel very grateful for. And my dad really taught it to me. But there are non-monetary benefits to do anything in life. Like maybe the money isn't always there, but you're getting like some hands-on experience. You're not just like a tiny little gear in a big machine. You're actually like, you're getting to do things that if you worked for twice the money, you wouldn't be able to do, meeting people that you wouldn't be able to meet. Like I fully understand the non-monetary benefits of most things. Especially like as I get older, I'm like, oh my God, money is like so annoying.
Yeah. Money is just one
but I love it.
type of asset.
Right.
There's tons of different assets out there.
Yeah.
Relationships, physical property, tools to let you do stuff. Like if you can get, I think we're so, like society for some reason, so hyper-focused on cash.
Right.
And yes, it's important, but I think that focus blinds us. You know, we get like the blinders on and all we see is cash, cash, cash. And we forget that we can develop relationships that are assets that will eventually get us that cash. We can trade time as an asset to eventually get that. Like we have to think outside the box a little.
Right. And especially, you know, I didn't grow up, my family didn't have money. I didn't grow up with that. I had to work the whole time I was in school. I really have not stopped working because I needed to survive and sustain my life. But for a while I was able to like live with my parents, which was an amazing thing. And they didn't charge me, thank God. And so I think that if you have the privilege to have like time as an asset, then you should spend it, right?
Don't let your ego get in the way
100%.
either. Like if you have, like you said, that privilege, family, people to help you to bear some of the burden of keeping you on this planet. Yeah. Right. Like lean into that. Take advantage of it. Not everybody has that privilege. Use it like, to your advantage. Like there's nothing wrong with using your privilege. There is something wrong with not.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because that's a sin.
Right.
Not using what you have.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, you know, if there's, I work with a lot of young people, particularly at GoGo's, and we have the nonprofit that it is associated with because it's a social enterprise. So I work with a lot of young people. My partner is also a high school teacher at a high needs school in South LA. So I work with a lot of young people that always want to ask me questions and things like that. And they're always like focused on, you know, the next cool shoe that they can buy and things like that. Or like, oh, I want to work here because I'll make $17.50 and not here because I work 17 or I'll make 17. And I'm like, well, what about your commute? What about your quality of life? What about like, what are you learning here versus what you're learning there? Like what you have to, there's so many things to assess. That's not just the dollar amount. And I think particularly in this city, the city of Los Angeles, it's hard to not just focus on the dollar amount because it's quite expensive. Yeah. And so
$230 for my Uber ride from the airport to the Airbnb.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, because you guys had to get a biggie one, right?
I think it was surge was going on. But I was like, holy
cow.
That's a
lot.
Yeah, we got hit. Yeah. But yeah, it's expensive. The point being, yes, it is very expensive to be in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
There's a reason why I only come for 3 days at a time.
I know. And I'm like, Dan, my partner, is from Philadelphia. Yeah. The suburbs of Philly, actually. And he thinks all the time about leaving, but my whole family's here. Yeah. And there's no Mexicans where he's from. And so I'm like, I can't. I need some melanated skin cells. And so, but yeah, I mean, it's easy to say, and I feel like it's easy to say, like, you know, yeah, the non-monetary benefits, but I really strongly stand by that if you have the ability, but also like some people don't. And so I get that too. But if you do, like, definitely take advantage because then your network that you can build, like who you can call on if you need a favor, like that stuff really, really matters. And you don't want to penny pinch your way. And this is a mistake I made. Okay. Full disclosure, anybody that knows me that's listening to this, like I grew up with scarcity. We didn't have all the money in the world. So being cheap and like tight with the cash was something that like I was like, no, I have to be tight with the cash at Guerrilla. I have to. And that ostracizes people, right? Because they're like, first of all, like, why are you like that? Second of all, like, you know, might have set an employee for what, $20? Like, but I was like, no, the cash. But those are like the non-monetary benefits on the other side, right? Like, yes, I will lose $30 if I agree to do this nice thing for the employee, but what will I gain? And that is something I did not understand.
The more you give, the more you get. And you can't track it. And for those of us in the industry who are so data driven and ROI driven,
Yes.
you just kind of have to have faith and just believe that the better you take care of people, the more generous you are,
Yeah.
the more you give, the more value you put out into the universe pays attention to that shit.
Yeah.
It will return. You just kind of have to believe that it will.
Yeah.
You know? So back to your timeline, you joined Petty Cash. According to my calendar, 2013 is when you joined Petty Cash.
Yeah, the end of 2013.
What were the biggest lessons when you joined this team, being a part of an established restaurant group? What were how were the gears being shifted in your world to take you to the next level?
I worked with Melissa Kujakian, who was the GM at the time, and she was very disciplined. I mean, what is interesting about what I learned then that I think maybe doesn't totally answer your question, but kind of does, is I was able to see the restaurant industry 10 years ago. Whereas now it's so different. So maybe in that moment I was just learning the technical things, how to use a POS, how to read a PMix, how to do this, how to do that. And so that's not super interesting, right? But as a 2022 restaurateur, I was like, oh my God, things were so different in 2014, 2015, 2013. Like, and it's a little less than a decade, but like the culture was incredibly different. It was like, you do whatever it takes for this restaurant to survive, like at all costs, you know, like it was very male dominated. The men definitely had the control and women were not.
It's still male dominated, but I think that women are definitely making a surge. Like,
Yeah.
And just from my experience as a host, talking to successful restaurateurs, I'm talking to a lot more women today.
Yeah.
And I love that. And sometimes I get worried because I don't talk to enough women.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think it's also a reflection that there's just more dudes out there.
Yeah.
Which we're making a change.
Yeah.
It's happening. And I think I've witnessed it over the past 10 years, and I couldn't be more excited.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm one of the founding members of Regarding Her Food, which is an LA-based women's group, basically, and we do this festival. We just launched it in DC, so hopefully it's going to go national soon. But getting to talk to other women about like, oh, I'm having this thought, you know, and it's, you know, very emotion based or whatever it is. And when being like, if you were a man, you would not be thinking like that. Like you wouldn't care. You would just do whatever. And so I think that there's this like collective like sigh of relief as, you know, more women are in charge in this industry. And there's also still like a lot to learn because we want to not make the mistakes of our male counterparts, but it's hard, you know. The economics of the restaurants have been the same for so long, you know, so you can't like just like the like masculine like, no, my way, that's it, done. It doesn't work anymore.
Yeah,
for sure.
No, that way is definitely going. I mean,
Yeah.
with why go to work for somebody like that when there's so
Right.
many great organizations
Yeah,
you can work for,
100%.
right? So you also around this time, like I think there's like an underlying lesson here too. What Petty Cash did with you, they didn't look at you as a host.
Right.
They said you're a host and you have a background in HR. You have
Yeah.
a law, like you were going to school for law. Like
Yeah.
you're much more than a host. Like, do you want more?
Yes.
And we don't open up the possibility for more because we hire people for a job and you're that solution for me.
Yeah.
And that's it. I'm not interested in you beyond that.
Right.
Right. And like, how did they approach you and open it up for more?
Yeah. So I want to say too, Blue Bottle or Handsome Coffee got purchased by Blue Bottle, right?
Okay. Don't ask me. That sounds right. I
Yeah,
think
it
so.
did.
Okay.
I'm saying right isn't like
you
right.
think I would be right?
No,
or
it's
would
right.
know.
I was there.
I mean, I do host an industry business podcast. I think I would have a clue, but I don't.
No, so I'm saying like right, like no, but so Blue Bottle purchased Handsome Coffee while I was there.
Okay.
And Blue Bottle was this really big growing company. Now I feel like they're everywhere, particularly in LA and New York and blah blah blah.
Yeah. They're on my list for future guests, by the way.
Oh yeah,
I'd love to make that happen.
Well,
You know anybody? Make it happen?
I know some people, but
Okay. Talk after.
I'm skeptical about it. So when they came, they were first only in like the Bay Area, and they were opening their first LA cafe, and that was going to be the purchase of Handsome. So when they did that, they needed somebody to do HR for the LA region, and I had just graduated with my degree, and I went to a certificate program, and I got the Sherman certification. So I had done all this like HR stuff, and so I applied for the position and they continued to like interview me pretty far, but ultimately they were like, oh, well, we want somebody that has been doing it for a little longer. So it's like, fine. But they're just so big and corporate now that, you know, I feel like I'm awesome. And I always think like they lost out on me.
You're
you know,
lost.
Yeah. What would my life be if I was, you know, because I'm born and raised here. Like they ended up bringing somebody from out of LA to come and do HR here. And employees here are different. Everything here is different. My chef currently is from New York, and he's like, LA is like a totally different game because people are much more sensitive about their work-life balance.
Yeah, and just people in general, like literally just came from LA last week to here, and we might have been killed 3 or 4 times walking the streets of LA recently, but at least they said sorry.
Yeah.
You know, like they're like, whoops, didn't see you there, my bad. In New York, they're like, oh, almost had another check mark to add to my. Like there's definitely I think there's more room. It's like LA's spread out a little bit more. So I think I don't know. We're not getting into a conversation on like demographics and like
I could though.
Sociology, but there's definitely to reinforce what your chef said.
You're right. Yeah. And so I was like really bummed because I was like, wow, I'm like super qualified. I really want to do this. I didn't have like the years. I was young, so I didn't have the years of experience. But the person that they ended up hiring didn't end up either. But they were from outside, so I think that's what they wanted. And being at Petty Cash, and I think it was the AGM, his name was Winston, like reading through my resume, and then Melissa approaching me to like take a job. It was like, oh my God, I feel seen. And so always having that experience in the back of my mind and thinking like, how can I do that for other people is really important. And sometimes like it's hard and sometimes I fail, and it is more work for sure. Being
seen is like I think 4th on the list of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's that significant. I think first is food and shelter. Second is security. Third is belonging, being seen. Third. That's how important it is for people.
Yeah.
Aside from food and water in like a shelter.
Yeah.
The next important thing is, do you see me?
Yeah.
Am I here? It's so significant, and we don't leverage that
Definitely
enough.
not.
Just taking the time to see people.
And I'm guilty of that myself. I mean, even though that was my experience, you know, however many years ago, I'm guilty of that now with over 50 employees. Like, it's so easy for, you know, one of my chefs come up to me like, hey, blah, blah, blah is upset because you didn't say hi to them. And I'm like, well, I'm fucking busy. Oh, sorry, am I allowed to say that?
I've said way worse.
Okay. I was like, I'm fucking busy. Like, leave me alone, blah, blah. But it's so easy to forget that it's a little thing. Just do it. It's, you know, it means a lot. And honestly, I want to say hi, but it's like, oh, somebody's calling me. I got to go do this. I got to go do that. Everything in my life is so much more important. And that's, I think, where something I suck at, but I recently deleted TikTok and Instagram to help with this.
Really?
But I know.
We'll save a little bit more of that for later because I've done the same. And I think there's a mass movement coming right now. But I don't. Let's shelf that.
But I was gonna say that's where like the mindfulness comes in, and being mindful of how you appear as the boss, because you have so much more power. I'm Brittney. I'm just a normal person, which I am. But when you're somebody's boss and like the owner of the company that somebody works for, in a time where that really matters and where people are a lot more mindful and conscious of where they're choosing to work, that behavior, all those little things of seeing your employees, totally matters. And for me, I'm struggling with that, like to this moment.
But it's not just a one-way street. What happens when you see your employees, when you take the time to literally see and understand and listen to your employees? You find out that they have background in law and HR. And all of a sudden you're like, holy shit. Well, here you go. Like, why weren't we leveraging this before?
100%.
It's a two-way street. It's a win-win situation to slow down and just say, who's here? What do we got to work with? You know? Okay, so starting this Beekeepers bookkeeping, how did you juggle you were in school, you were working in the hospitality, and you started your own business?
So this was 2015. So I graduated from school. I know I'm like all over the place with my own timeline. I'm like, what year was I born now? So this was, and I was doing a lot overlapping. And so it's hard to like, but it was 2015 because I know I had graduated and I was like, I need something to fill in my days. And so I had known people from coffee and from like serving people coffee because I'm super chatty. And I knew people were struggling because creative people often struggle to get their LLCs together, to get their cash handling procedures together, to do their handbooks. And so I was like, I saw a need there. And it was very, very short lived because I immediately like kind of hooked on to wanting to be more involved with Guerrilla, and seeing that Guerrilla had much more of a need beyond just like cash handling. It was like, you know, Wes was an ultimate creative, didn't understand or want to or care to know all of the business side. So that was a very short-lived time, but basically it was just like reaching out to people that I knew were starting something and was like, hey, can I help you with this? You can pay me hourly and I can help you get it set up, and then I'll move on.
Yeah.
And people were super down with it.
And like, if you see, like, being able to tie your name to successful brands and influential people like Wes at this time was garnering a lot of attention. He was doing a lot of cool stuff. Like, if you can hitch your bandwagon to that, like, and get pulled along and like and serve them and getting them to where they want to go, like, it serves everybody.
100%.
Was that kind of going through the back of your mind? Like, if I can show people, if I can help this dude who's clearly going someplace, if I can help him get there faster, that might create opportunity for
100%. Yeah. And I'm super grateful for the opportunity that Wes was like, okay, you know, because he could have been like, I don't fucking know you, but like, he knew me, but not well. So he was very down with it. And I was also helping like Egg Slut at the time. And, you know, but yeah, Wes was super open to allowing me to take a shot. And so I was super like, oh, this guy, this is going to be something for sure.
Okay. We're back. And I would love to get into what it was like when you first started working with Wes.
Yeah. So it was definitely the Wild West. Wes was a chef. You know, he didn't understand a lot of the businessy, you know, financial side. So it was just taking a hold of that and really implementing systems, responding to emails that he had not responded to, because he had one inbox for like everything.
I know that feeling right now.
Exactly. So just like, okay, we need to make a clear events package. We need to make a clear Wes email. So when people want to do media inquiries with him, we need to, you know, pay our employees.
Anybody listening to this who said, I can do that and wants to do that, send me an email.
Yeah. There you go.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, so many people need that person, right? Like, so many people. It's crazy. And I always want to do it for people because I really enjoy that part. I really enjoyed, like, all right, what are we going to do? Here are all my ideas, especially when it's so messy that, like, all the ideas are obvious. Like, just make a second email. Whoa. And you, like, feel so accomplished. And so it was just, like, sorting things out, making our catering program a lot more clean cut, opening more days, because I think he was only open 2 days, and I was like, well, there's a market here for more days. People want the food. He was changing the menu daily. I didn't feel like that was appropriate because of the food costs and the level of his own energy that took. So we transitioned to changing the menu weekly. And because we moved locations, like, they didn't know, like, you know, they were like, oh, we're in Culver City now, so it's new to them. And, you know, building more relationships with Blue Bottles, because I had just left, but they had opened a bunch. So, like, all right, now we're at Blue Bottle Venice. Now we're at Blue Bottle Echo Park. Now we're at Blue Bottle in Sweetser.
So leveraging your relationships for the pop-ups.
100%. Yeah. So, and the baristas, so because I worked at Blue Bottle, the baristas would save us a spot. We would text them when we get there, and then they would move their cars.
So where was Wes up to this point? He was 2013 when he started?
2012.
2012. Yeah. So this is 4 years into his operation. So immediately off the bat, you saw that there was some obvious what's the word I'm looking for? Inefficiencies.
Right. Yeah.
Of he's doing amazing work, but why change it every day if your clientele is different?
Right.
Like you said, it's new to them. Change it once a month. Little simple
once a week.
Things,
Yeah,
once a week. Thank you. Little simple things that are little but huge on your operational expenses. Yeah. Right. What are the other things that you were doing to be more efficient, and also leveraging relationships?
Yeah.
Huge.
Yeah. So definitely, like, getting the relationships, just doing, like, general, making sure our taxes were paid on time, making sure that, you know, we applied for any food events that were happening.
Any advice for getting into those food events as far as applying to them?
Oh, that's tough. I mean, it is really just making sure that you're incredibly responsive and on top of the people. Like, for example,
the squeaky wheels
gets the oil. Yeah, definitely.
You know it better than I do.
Yeah, because I've been a squeaky wheel for so long. Yeah. So yeah, definitely. Yeah, just keep consistent, and then also identify who the producer of that event is, and if you can get a direct contact to them, invite them to have your food.
How do you get a direct contact to a producer?
Well, for example, if you're trying to be in Smorgasburg, you know, you can Google their website and go to the About section and then see if there's somebody there. If not, go to LinkedIn, or, like, you know, there's, like I say, there's so many resources, and I'd like to say I have, like, a master's degree in lurkology. Like I love to lurk on like people. So like go to Smorgasbord.
Lurk, creep, whatever you
Yeah,
want to call
yeah,
it.
whatever. Go to that event's Instagram, look at who they're following, look at like the tagged posts. Like there's so much. Everyone's on everything. Google like the job description and LinkedIn might come up with like there's a million ways to find those people.
Tailor the message.
Yeah. And find them and be like, come eat free food. Everyone loves free food.
Yeah.
And so if they're willing to come, maybe that's not the right fit, but maybe they give you some tools of like tweak this, tweak that, and maybe we can talk in the future. And that's super helpful too. And all you had to sacrifice was like a free meal. So definitely that. Yeah.
I've heard, or people have told me, never give away money, only give away food, because that's the best marketing.
Yeah.
Food in muss.
Yeah.
You want people to taste your food. You don't want them to know that you exist.
Yeah.
You want them to know what you taste like.
Right. 100%.
And that you exist. Right.
Yeah.
And that's what brings people in. Any other lessons during this early time, first coming on, you're doing this bookkeeping.
Yeah.
You're more than that. You're also like, you're paying attention to the industry. You're creating opportunities. You're leveraging relationships. You're helping get exposure. What else is going on during this time?
Yeah, I mean, it was, we were learning to be more professional when it came to events because it was like such a small business. You know, we would like sometimes show up late or like not be prepared, and so a lot of bad behaviors.
Whoever shows up late.
I know.
We were 5 minutes late today.
Yeah. But like, learning to connect with the right events people and like getting those contacts and talking to people, and be like, hey, what's your name? What do you do? Oh, can I get your number? Like, just in case if you think of something, call us. All of that. I mean, I was super young, so there was definitely also like I didn't have a work-life balance. My boundaries were super messed up then.
It's also easier to not have work-life balance when you're 25. So it's weird. I get this sometimes, and like we hear all the time. I hear all the time contradicting advice.
Yeah.
Some people will be like, say yes to everything.
Yeah.
And other people are like, be careful what you say yes to, because everything you say yes to is something else you have to say no to.
Right.
And there's truth to that. But I think that both schools of thought are right. It's just a matter of applying the school of thought at the right time in your life.
Yeah.
And early on in your life, when you have very little liability and you have the energy and you're still trying to figure out what the fuck you are and who you are and what you want to do, say yes to everything.
Yes.
But once you start to get that identity and you figure out what you're good at and what matters to you and what your vision is, what your mission is, you have to start getting more selective. Yeah,
I mean, I think a good example of that for me is with Guerrilla. It's so established. We get so many event inquiries. We are super duper busy. So we don't have to say yes to every event that's asked. But GoGo's is brand new. It's only been open for 6 months. So
different phase.
Yeah, I say yes to everything. And like, no matter what, I'll be like, fine, we'll be there. Yeah, sure, whatever. And we did that during Guerrilla's time, Guerrilla and early time as well. But now it's not in that phase anymore. And one thing that I think Chef West taught me a lot was that not everyone is our customer, particularly with Guerrilla, wherein our food is...
We're in LA.
Yeah. When our food is a little bit different and it does challenge the palate, it does challenge your notions about Mexican food. Not everyone is our customer, not everyone is our guest, and that is okay. But I don't know. I once listened to this Ryan Seacrest podcast, and he does talk about like saying,
I'm competing with Ryan Seacrest now.
No, maybe it was Kiss FM or something. Okay. Yeah, because he's like the host here, and he did talk about how like, because it's like, how did Ryan Seacrest get famous? Like, what is he even? But he was like, I used to just say yes to everything. So I think when you're in, but now he doesn't, of course, Ryan Seacrest. But when you're in that building phase, you don't got the luxury of no. You just gotta like obviously have boundaries within your values and understanding all of that, and like don't say yes to like something you don't align with. But if you align with it, and maybe it's going to take a little extra hustle, like just do it, because you never know you're going to meet. And
start young, because it'll be easier when you're younger, for sure. So when did things really start to like accelerate for you in Guerrilla and West?
Yeah, so we were on the truck for a while, and then the brick and mortar opened in 2018. And so really during like the 2016 we started to work together to 2018, we were like pumping, chugging along, and things were like really operating smoothly, and we were super busy, and we were hitting our financial goals. And then we were like, let's make it harder. let's open a physical location. And so we started the hunt in 2017, and we found a place, and I began fundraising for it. So I did all the fundraising myself. I put together our pitch deck. I saw through the budgeting and the project managing, and, attended all the meetings and things like that, like things I had no clue about. Learned so many lessons, like even through that first one, so many lessons that when I opened GoGo's, it was like, no, you ain't gonna get me this time. I know the thing.
Let's dive into those lessons though. Like, what were you looking for in a space? What lessons? What didn't you know when you started that process that you knew immediately after opening?
Yeah, I mean, it's not so much in the space as it was like in the build out of the space. Like, do we need these crazy $5,000 chairs?
I'm going to put a note to talk about the build up, but I'm really curious because I want to go chronologically.
No,
how did you get the money? What
Got you.
Because you were talking about like, what was the pitch like? How were you? It's not easy to get money.
Yeah.
I'm actually thinking about going through this process myself, so I'm really interested
Yeah.
in this. How do you get the money?
So we met somebody through the owners of Silver Lake Wine, because we had posted up outside of Silver Lake Wine for many years. And Randy's the owner's name. He introduced us to this guy who was like, hey, I'm opening a hotel. I want to put Guerrilla tacos at the bottom of it as a licensing deal. We were like, great. That's going to make our lives so much easier. The location ended up falling through. And so after that happened, I was like, hey, would you be interested in investing with us? And he was like, yes.
Real quick question. With this hotel deal, if that was the case, would it have been a standalone Guerrilla Taco that was underneath a hotel that had its own entry?
Underneath a hotel.
Okay, but it wasn't like in the hotel.
No.
Okay.
Yeah. It had its own entry and stuff. Yeah. And so that ended up falling through, and I was like, well, would you still be willing to invest? And he said yes, but we still didn't have enough money. So we had.
How much money do you think you needed?
I ended up raising $1.8 million.
Where did you come up? What was the number that you said you thought you would need to get started? What was the goal? What was the target?
The original goal was $1 million, and then as we started to get in, it was like, ooh, we're gonna need another $1 million.
What were the other things that you didn't consider when you thought you needed $1 million that made you realize you needed more?
I think when we picked the space, which was where we're sitting now, it needed a lot more TLC than we anticipated, and I think that process of like, oh, we need to redo the bathrooms, we need to redo the AC, oh, this roof is a little bit less stable than we thought, all
this
that
doesn't
just
meet
added
code.
up.
That doesn't meet code.
Yeah.
Ching,
Yeah.
ching, ching, ching.
Exactly.
They say at least 50% additional of whatever you think it's going to take. And for your case, it was almost 100%.
Yeah.
So.
And again, when I opened my second restaurant, it was almost exactly on the number because I anticipated a lot. It ended up being a couple $100,000 over, but it was like pretty solid because I'd done it once, right? So I learned a lot of lessons. But
so back to that track of thought of how did you get it?
Yeah. So when once we got the first chunk of money, and I was like, okay, we still need to finish off this fundraising, I just started to, we had a significant Instagram following. So I just started to reach out to every contact I knew, anyone that I thought had money or was like a little bit rich or had, the income to invest. And I would DM them, or if I had their email, I would send an email. If I knew a friend that knew them, I would get that contact through that person. And I just had meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting of like, hey, this is what we're doing. You want to be a part of it? Yes, no. Okay, next. Hey, this is what we're doing. And I was really fortunate to meet Phil Rosenthal's investment group, and his business manager, Scott Feinstein. He was like, I love to invest in women because I've found the most success. And so they were willing to give us like a large chunk at the end, and it worked out amazingly.
See, Wes didn't know how lucky he was saying yes to you back in 2016.
Yeah.
So what about building that Instagram following? What were you, because I know you had he had probably built a decent following before you came on board.
Yeah. So when I started with Guerrilla, we had like maybe 8,000 followers, I think.
Okay.
And now we're like closer to like 65.
Wow.
and we grew a lot in like that time on the truck. And I think it was just like super organic.
Were you
like,
doing most of the social media at this point?
Him and I both, yeah.
What were the things that he wasn't doing that you encouraged him to start doing, if anything?
I think we were just cooking more, and so there was just more content, honestly. And I think one of the things that's very unique about our style of marketing is that it is very guerrilla style, right? It's super informal. We just like, if Wes gets something cool, he posts it. If like something cool is happening event-wise, we post it, all kinds of things. So I think it was just...
Was there strategy in tagging?
No.
No.
We had no strategy.
Just being cool, huh?
Just being cool.
Okay.
Try it.
Well.
It's so easy. No, not at all. No, but I think it was just being, not even being cool, but being like very authentic. And I think a lot of people identify
get that from you.
Yeah.
I love that from you.
Yeah. And, you know, Wes is very much that way as well. And the way that he liked to do funky things with food was cool, you know, like as simple as that sounds. But very much even now, you know, with him not around anymore, it's a totally new marketing strategy, and we are having to be a little bit more strategic. So, basically people knew about Guerrilla beyond our Instagram, and the people that invested us didn't usually follow us anyway. So
how many total investors did you have?
We have 3.
You have 3.
Yeah.
Did you have 3 from the beginning?
Yeah.
And what were you offering them in return?
Yeah, so they get equity in the business. So they get first payments. So any type of profit goes straight to them to get their money back. And they get first payments until they get 1.5% or 1.5 times their money back. And then once they do, we split the profits and until they get 300% of their money back.
So if I give you $100,000, then you would pay them until they have $150,000.
Correct. And then once you hit that number, we would split the profits until you got 3 times your money, which was $300,000, and then it would go to participation percentage of profit.
What's participation percentage of profit?
Basically, if you own, so let's say you own 20% and I own 80, until you get 3 times your money back, we split it 50-50. But once you do get 3 times your money back, then you just get 20% and I get 80.
Got it.
That's your participation in ownership.
Okay. So will there ever be a point where you don't pay them?
No. Nope.
So they're in for life.
Yeah.
So what is your profit margin? Do you mind me asking that question?
Well, what do we want it to be, or what is it actually?
What percentage of revenue is profit?
Right now it's quite low. We're at like 2%. Restaurant industry is a bad investment sometimes. Pre-pandemic, we were closer to 7%, but this industry is not for money.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that today. Like, maybe I should do something else.
But so of that 7%, what percentage goes to your?
Right now, all of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
because
how do you pay yourself?
I get a salary.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I think that's really important, and a lot of people don't build in owner's pay.
Yeah, you have to.
You have to factor that in.
Yeah.
And profit is after.
Right.
You know, so
because if you don't, then you're going to be doing the job forever and your numbers are wrong, because you eventually will have to pay for somebody to do that job. And so you will not have that budgeted in.
Have you heard of Profit First?
No.
It's a really great like money management system that basically takes this idea of like, what do you want your profit to be? Take that money first.
Oh, shit.
Because the idea behind that is once you have it, then that whatever's left over dictates your growth. And it forces you to get scrappy and creative because you're taking your profit first.
Interesting.
It's a great book. Mike Michalowicz. I recommend anybody. But they work in that idea. You take your profit, and then it's owner's pay. Or it's profit first, then tax.
Okay.
Because that's not your money. The next most important thing is owner's pay. And then that, because you have to pay yourself. Because if you're not good,
right,
how can you expect to show up for other people?
100%, yeah.
Right. I love it. If anybody's interested in that, reach out to me. I'm happy to tell you more. Back to your story.
Okay.
Three sponsors. You can tell what industry I'm in. 3 investors. You shared your model with us. Thank you very much for getting into that detail. You find the space.
Yes.
From there, talk to us like what didn't you know going into it, and what do you know now about how to go into a space, and like just paint that picture of what to expect.
I will say this. Everybody, like the classic thing to say is location, location, location. And I think as an arrogant, borderline narcissistic 24-year-old, I was like, that's bullshit, you know? And now as like a 29-year-old wise lady, because I figured out everything before 30. Just kidding. But as I was like, this is bullshit. It doesn't matter. If we have good food, people will come. And I guess that's true, but it's really fucking hard. Yeah. So like if you can prioritize location first, do it, because your life will be so much easier.
You have a beautiful space.
Yes, it is beautiful.
What is it about this location that you wish you'd change?
I like to say, so we are in a neighborhood called the Arts District, which is like the cool neighborhood outside of downtown. And I think it's like a little bit of a Ponzi scheme because we have a lot of developers coming in and like, oh my God, this neighborhood's so cool. There's people everywhere, yada, yada, yada. And so they sell the stars and the moon, and it's just not there. If we think about it as like a circle, right, and we're in the middle of the circle, literally like right next to us is Skid Row. On the other side is Boyle Heights, which is like a predominantly lower income neighborhood. We are a destination. We are not people's local neighborhood spot. The ones that do live here, it's not enough to sustain our business and all the other restaurants. So we are a destination. And I was originally sold that it wasn't, that it was just like the happening spot. And as I've like kind of been in the neighborhood more and realized, I'm like, oh, we have to get people to come out of their house from Santa Monica or from the West Side.
I do think there's something to be said, like in my experience, that growth tends to happen from the inside out, right? And I think that this area, if you look back to like 2001, just interviewed Said Moses. You must know Said, right? He's one of your neighbors here. He moved into this area, this neighborhood in 2001.
Yeah.
And then this area was in it.
Yeah.
You know, like it was bad. It was dangerous.
Yeah.
You know, and you look at how far we've come in the past 20 years and where we were in 2018, there's a good chance that this area was kind of like, you know, like again, from the inside out. Like I wouldn't be surprised in the next 2 years or 4 years if we continue to move away from what the past 2 years have been like. You guys could be sitting in a good spot.
Well, I will say this. I'm like going to get a little political maybe.
Okay.
But
you know more about this community than I do. So if I'm wrong, tell me I'm a knucklehead.
No. You are not a knucklehead. And I think that you are like totally on point. The problem is that it is most people that are in the ownership position. And there are a few like grandfathered owners that have been here forever that are amazing in this neighborhood. But a lot of the newer people, they just want their like, you know, $8 a square foot right now. And small businesses can't afford that. And so maybe it can get to that point. But we basically in 2012, the rents around here were about 90 cents a square foot. Right now, in my opinion, the market can support closer to $4 a square foot. But we have tons of vacancies where the landlords are charging upwards of $8 a square foot, which is double what in my opinion, the market is offering. And so what does that mean? That means we have tons of vacancy. And what does vacancy mean? It means like emptiness. There's nobody. Nothing is attracting anybody here. And one of my fears is a lot of these like bigger developers, like we have One Santa Fe, which is this huge development, or Aliso, huge development, that they're going to start inviting like Quiznos because they can afford it, or like
deep pockets,
right?
Take the soul out of the community.
Exactly. And then it can't grow from within because it's like KFC. They don't care about us. Like if you want a cool places are usually kind of poor. And so like if you want this, if you really care about the community's growth more than your profits, then you have to give a little bit of a discounted rent and allow it to grow organically. But if you're like, oh, it's, you know, $4 what the market's saying, I can get $8. That's what my fancy broker told me, which is just not true.
Do you know Said Moses?
I do. I do. I don't know him well, but you
guys are a lot aligned.
Yeah.
In a lot of your beliefs.
I know he's been in the neighborhood for a really long time, and I worked at Arts District Brewery like very briefly one time. But yeah, I know who he is for sure, but I don't know him.
But he's echoing a lot of the same sentiments that if we're going to change this community, it has to come from the inside out. Yeah, we have to create, like, we have to go in and we have to create opportunity. We have to be there for our people. Right. And when you just choose to like contract out to like this corporation that's based in Atlanta, you know, like, is that really community based? Exactly. You know? And you might be creating opportunity for people by giving them jobs, but do we need more jobs in this industry, or do we need careers?
Right. 100%.
You know, do we need more owners? I think we need more owners. Yeah. Personally, we need to spread out the wealth. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm picking up what you're putting down for sure. So more about the space, where you are today. 2018, you opened this space. You're 24 years old. You told us a lot about the build out, what to expect, the lessons learned during the build out, lessons from how to raise money, always get more than you think. When was the next evolution, like the next like lesson for you?
Yeah, so we kind of ran. We were building the plane while we were flying it, and it was working. You know, it was like puttering along. But then the pandemic came, right? So we opened in late July 2018. So we had like a solid year and a half before March 2020. And so when the pandemic came, it was like everything was different. And I mean, me as like a leader, me as a person, like the way that the sentiment of employees had changed, like it was such a big, and this was now 2 years ago. What? Like we've been open 4 years. This is like, well, it'll be 4 years in July, and this was 2 years ago, right? So I think that was like the next big like bitch slap of like, girl, you gotta elevate, because it's easy to go on autopilot, right?
Yeah.
So
It's easy to get fat, dumb, and happy and just kind of cruising along like, oh, things are good.
Yeah.
But like that, your normal becomes the new normal for everybody, and then people catch up to you, and then if you don't continue to grow and evolve, then before you know it, people surpass you.
Yeah.
So what was going on that made you feel like you might be there? What was making you feel like you might have been getting a little too lackadaisical?
I think honestly, like, so the pandemic happened and then Wes left, and Wes was such a big force.
I think we should probably talk about that a
Yeah.
little bit. So what was going on? What, he was the founder, the original visionary. You were so inspired by him. You wanted to join forces with him. Where was he during this time? What made him want to leave?
I think that our visions no longer aligned. As the brick and mortar opened, it was just really, really busy, and it demanded a lot. And he wasn't able to do like these like funky one-off things that he really enjoyed to do. And you know, this wasn't the direction that he wanted to go, but it was very much the direction that I wanted to go. And so when we knew that we were not aligning anymore and we really working together didn't make sense and it didn't seem doable anymore, it was like, okay, do I leave or do you leave? And I offered to leave, and ultimately like he decided that he
Was
felt
there
like,
a blowout?
no.
Yeah.
I think, you know, like he ultimately just decided like his time here was done. And that's very much his personality. You know, he's like super creative and was like, look, I did what I needed to do. My time here is done. And
I think that's a good, healthy mindset to have, especially for chefs, honestly, because chefs, I don't think they recognize their intellectual property well enough. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're creatives.
Right.
Go out, create.
Yeah.
Create standards around your creations. Get it to the point where you don't need to be there anymore.
Right.
Hand it off. Help create something for somebody who's more of a business-minded operations person, right? And then go off and do your next thing.
Yeah.
And then, but also like, know that there's a role for you just to go out and be that for different concepts who want something, who might not have the culinary chops.
Yeah.
Be that for them. And then, you know, like, sell them your intellectual property. Like, get paid well for that. You know? So how did you guys work out the split? Did you buy him out?
No,
like,
so Wes is still an owner of Guerrilla Tacos. Yeah. So I mean, it was pretty easy. He just like stopped working here, and was able to kind of do whatever he wanted. But you know, he's just a silent owner now, and so we can't like, you know, what do you say, like pimp him out anymore. It's like, look at this cool guy. So
you can't use his likeliness or his likeness.
Yeah, it just wouldn't make sense because he's not here, right?
But what about if there's like, what if you want to make a tweak to the recipe or like?
Yeah, we do all the time.
So you just contract him out, or just say, hey, come
no,
in and like.
He doesn't do any. He's nothing. Does nothing anymore.
Okay.
So Wes picked his, what do you say? His replacement? What do you say?
Protege.
No, it's not. It's not the word. It's
I don't know. Replacement works.
Replacement. Okay, yeah. One day I'll think. I'm gonna text you in the middle of the night. This is the word. But Wes picked his replacement, and he's an amazing chef. Successor. Yes! You did it.
That doesn't happen often.
Yeah. So proud of you. So Wes picked his successor, and his name is Jason, and him and I happen to align a lot better. And so Jason's awesome, and has really like, he understood Wes's vision. Wes trusted that. And Wes is just like doing his own thing at his own spot, and like, you know, we're just here vibing. Yeah. So Jason, these are all Jason's recipes. It's all Jason now.
Love that.
Yeah.
So when did you open your second project?
So Cafecito or GoGo's?
Which one was the second?
So Cafecito was second, which is next door. And it opened in July 2020, the same time Wes left. And it was originally, so there was a nail.
It's like 3 months after the pandemic.
Yeah, I know. It's like so
What was
smart.
going through your mind?
Well, I'll tell you. So next door was a nail salon. And like I said, the arts district was a Ponzi scheme. So it was, I really stand by that. So the nail salon was like this really upscale, expensive nail salon. And it just wasn't doing well already. And then when the pandemic came, it was kind of like the nail in the coffin. The last nail in the coffin. Oh my God. I know. I love that.
Keep going.
And so they reached out to me and were like, hey, because we had this space and then there was the nail salon and then there was our office space. So we had 2 of 3 spaces. And they were like, hey, do you want to take this over? Like, we're done. You know, we could sublease to you. And I was like so down because I wanted to have a private dining space. It was a nail salon, so they had like a kind of a coffee setup sort of. And I was in coffee for so long, so I was like, yeah, we can definitely do this. Like, the pandemic's going to be over any day now. This was July 2020.
It's your fault. You jinxed it.
I know. But I was like, when it's over, you know, this is a beautiful event space for people to have like one-off parties, and we can do a coffee shop in the meantime just to pay the rent. And so we started the coffee shop because people wanted our breakfast burritos, but we weren't doing them. And so I was like, this coffee shop is a perfect way to sell coffee and breakfast burritos, and we can just, you know, go forward and like just do that until the pandemic's over. Then we'll close the coffee and just do it as our private event space.
Is that still the plan?
I mean, no, because Cafecito's killing it. The burritos are really tasty, and I really like being a part of coffee again. And it allows us, feels a little bit more me. Whereas
What time are they open till over there?
3. What time is it?
Damn it. I was going to get a breakfast burrito.
The burritos end at 12.
Oh, okay.
I know, because we make them here. And so we only share the kitchen.
Gotcha.
And so like, because it was not supposed to be long term, but you know, maybe we'll build out another kitchen.
I love when I see that type of growth, though, where you take one space and you just start to burst from the seams, and then there's a space that comes available immediately. Next year, you're like, sweet, blow out a wall. Like,
yeah.
And like that's the type of growth. I think people look at big restaurants and they go, that's what it takes to be successful.
Yeah.
But those big restaurants didn't start big.
Yeah.
They started where they could.
Yeah.
Small. And they grew over time. And people overextend. They get in trouble when they go too big too soon.
100%.
So I love seeing that slow, incremental, gradual, inside out. Not, hey, let's open another location 2 cities away.
Right.
Then, you know, like, let's do it literally next door.
Right.
And like, what's the benefit in that?
I mean, it literally being next door.
Yeah.
I mean, it's next door, so like
obvious,
it's
right?
yeah. I mean, it's amazing. It also like the stakes are low, right? Because if it doesn't work out, it's like, well, whatever. We're able to share resources, because the reason that these chains are so successful is the amount of resources that they can pool and be like, we want to buy 100 million pounds of chicken, and it's like, oh great, we'll charge you nothing for it.
Yeah.
We don't have that. We're a little baby restaurant, so having a second, you know, operation allows for that. The big thing during the pandemic, which is why I wanted to open it, was like it gave people hours, which you remember July 2020, people did not have places to go in hours, and so we were able to open something new, give some coffee, and give people some hours. And it like made no money, but like at least people were working and able to get like tips, and people were still getting coffee. So that was like a really big help for a lot of the staff that had been here for a long time.
And when did you open the 3rd operation?
So GoGo's opened in September of 2021. So it's a baby. And it's been a lot. Let me think. I wanted to open it because I had lost a friend during the pandemic to suicide. And I was like, what's the meaning of life? And it was really like the first big death I had experienced. And then a couple of months later, my dad passed away.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I know, such a bummer. And I was like 27, and I was like, oh my God, like nobody had ever died around me before. And now they're dropping like flies. So I was like I was 28.
That's a lot.
Yeah. I was like, the first death in your life is a lot.
Yeah.
And you really start to reevaluate like a lot. Like, damn, this shit is not permanent. Like,
you know, at the age of 36, I have yet to have a major death in my life.
Oh, so blessed.
But my grandmother was probably the first one, but she was 94 years old.
Right.
So like where like I was like anticipating it, being
Right.
prepared for it. And at that point you're almost like, you know what, like
It's how the peer parents tell you, like, people get old and die.
yeah. Like it's like bravo, you know, like way to go, you killed it, grandma.
Yeah.
You know, like, but like at 27, you know, that's tough to like be losing best friends who are close to you and parents. Like, I'm sorry.
No, yeah, it was rough. And particularly Juan Carlos, my really good friend that passed away, he was only 25. So it was like so crazy. And I was like, what's the meaning of it all? And I had always wanted to do a more approachable taco spot, like very classic LA tacos, where it's like carnitas, carne asada, chicken, mushroom, and steak. And I was like, I really want to do something like in Juan Carlos's honor, to do address mental health a little bit more. It's something I've struggled with. It's something a lot of my peers struggle with. And so I wanted to do something, but I was like, but I just like make tacos. Like, I don't know, like, what am I going to do? So I had met somebody that was doing a social enterprise called Flavors from Afar. And I mean, it just like immediately was like, oh my God, I want to do that too. So the way that it works is the trade supports like the social good aspect. So GoGo's has a carve out of 20% of profits go to this foundation, where we're able to just like help individuals on a case by case basis with like really whatever they need, because we're so small.
Yeah.
And that has been quite the adventure, opening it in September.
I'm curious, and I'm just curious. I think you might know the answer to this, and I've always been curious about this because of the pandemic. Is there numbers associated with suicide rates going up in the pandemic?
I know that they did go up. One of my
And it was that rate of change greater than the amount of people that died from the pandemic? It's something that I've been curious about.
I don't think so.
This is really grim to be
I know.
going
No,
here.
but it's life, right?
But at the same time, it's like, I wonder sometimes if our reaction was more detrimental than the thing itself. I don't know.
I don't think it was. It increased.
Well, that's
so
just
much
suicide
that
rate. That's just one side.
Right, got
But like,
you.
what else? Like,
Yeah.
what else did this do to economies, people's well-being?
Right.
And like,
Yeah, I do think a lot about my dad. You know, like, we didn't get to spend the last Christmas together, and like, you know, we didn't get to spend his birthday, like all these things. And I'm like, I wonder. And the last time I saw him, I like yelled at him, and I was like, you're just waiting to die. I was so mean. I was like,
I'm sorry.
I know. I'm totally okay with it, because I was like, that was an act of love.
Yeah.
I was yelling at him because I felt like he was kind of a little resigned.
Mm-hmm.
And I do wonder, like, you know, that the time I yelled at him was like the first time I'd seen him in a while, because I was scared to like.
I mean, look at the restaurant industry. How many restaurants closed and went out of business because of this?
Yeah.
And what kind of, like, what are these people left with? Like, what's their situation?
Yeah.
What's going to happen to their kids? And like, you know, I there's no way to track all that.
Yeah.
So I really wonder sometimes, not to get grim and to get deep, not to like play off the pandemic like it wasn't serious, as it was. But we can move on from this if you want to. I'm sorry.
No, I hear you. I definitely hear you. And those questions make so much sense to me. And like, I was asking myself a lot of those questions. But I felt like I needed to move forward. And so I also always felt like Guerrilla is mine, but it's like half mine. And I wanted to do something that was like totally me.
Yeah.
And I always say my mom would not come to Guerrilla Tacos if I didn't own it. You know, like, she comes all the time because I own it. But if I didn't, she'd be like, that's too weird. You know, she wants to eat like very basic food. So GoGo's is kind of that.
So where is GoGo's?
It's in Rampart Village.
How far is that from where we are?
About 15 minutes.
Okay.
It's not too far. Yeah, so it's like right by like Silver Lake. It's on Beverly, on the east side still. But the neighborhood is totally different. It is not as like cool and hip as this neighborhood, and that's been a huge lesson.
Yeah.
You know, it's not the safest part of town, which I'm like, oh shit. Like, not because I don't feel safe, but because my guests don't feel safe. And so that's been such a lesson. And that's why I was talking about like the location thing, because I think if I could do it again, I would be a little bit more cautious not because I felt totally fine and safe when I would eat there, but it's not about me, right? It's about people that can afford tacos that are like a little bit, they're $3 a taco, which, like, you know, is not $1.50. Maybe are not comfortable going out in that neighborhood. And that's been like such a challenge, right? And it's young people making the food. Like, the oldest employee we have is like 24, you know? So it's been a different kind of battle.
Yeah. I mean, but how are you overcoming that?
Oh, I mean, I'm in it right now.
Yeah,
I'm in it right now.
So some of the other thoughts I have, because this is your second,
Mm-hmm.
where your second standalone. If
Right.
you look at Guerrilla as being your first standalone, then you had that space that opened up adjacent
Right.
to you. So it's
kind of attached. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
why I'm
it's
like,
like-
it's a 1.5.
yeah, it's not exactly. This is your second standalone. What did you apply opening this that you didn't have in your your tool belt?
Yeah.
the first time around.
I think I really knew how to lay out the kitchen, which like here I was kind of like, we kind of laid it out like a food truck, which was a big mistake. And at GoGo's, like I kind of relied on Wes a little bit, and he was kind of like, I don't know. But at GoGo's, I totally laid out the kitchen myself. I don't know if you've ever seen The Founder. It's like about McDonald's.
Yep.
Yeah. And you know how he like draws out the map and like they make some practice. So I kind of did something like that on paper. I was like, okay, how is this going to flow? And we haven't had to change anything.
Side note, I got to promote my girl, Stephanie Robson, who worked with Cornell University. She's on her own now, but she does kitchen design and layout. Like, that's her thing. We did a 3-part workshop on kitchen design and layout for anybody who's going through what Brittney's talking about right now. Like, that workshop was powerful.
Yeah.
Literally, like, asking yourself, like, putting things in place and, like, going through, like, this mental exercise of, like, what makes sense where? Like,
Right.
what's the menu going to look like? How do we reverse engineer that?
Right.
You know?
Guests are going to ask for this thing. Where do I put this thing? Like, I role play all day, like 100%. That is like, people like, you think through it, but like actually doing it and having like randos be like, where are the napkins? And you're like, oh, I didn't think about that. I mean, it's like before you start putting things, and you guys went over this, but even from like when you're designing your counter for your service station or whatever, like role play, like, okay, what are the things that are it'll save you money in the long run because you will have to change it.
And not just from the operator standpoint, but also from the guest standpoint.
Right.
Like, sit in every seat.
Right.
Is there sun blasting in my eyes right now? Am I underneath an air conditioner? Like, from like the guest perspective, every seat, and like really try to like be ahead of the curve.
Right. 100%. Yeah.
Anything we haven't talked about up to this point, as far as things that you think you are especially equipped to address, things you wish you knew.
Yeah.
Somebody told you before you got started that would have prepared you better.
Yeah. I mean, I want to tell you, like, I think something I'm really hard on myself at, but I also think is like, I'm going to be positive and is like a little unique to my position, is that because I'm on the younger side and running these restaurants, I'm learning a lot of lessons like while I'm doing it, just like in life. And, sometimes I'm like, oh, what the fuck? Why did you do that thing? That's so stupid. But really, it's what's the hardest is the employee relations.
Yeah. So what are some of the stupid shit that you did that you were like, oh, why did I do that thing? That was bad. Get vulnerable.
So I'm Latina. And I'm gonna just like generalize myself if I may, but I grew up in a very crime and punishment environment. Like, you do the crime, you pay the time.
Yeah.
Or wait, that's how it goes.
Yeah.
And so as an owner, as a leader, I was very much more like, oh, they irritated me, I'm going to be just a dick. And that's like, I fucking regret that shit so much. And sometimes like, even still, like that side of me comes out when I'm not emotionally regulated, right? And I recently listened to this podcast that I really recommend. It's for women entrepreneurs. I don't know if I can.
No, absolutely.
Okay.
By all means, we're here to share information.
It's called Leadership is Feminine. It's by Chris Plackey. And she does these podcasting is not her main business. Her main business is leadership coaching for women, but she does like these 10-minute podcasts, just like, there's no sponsors or anything. That's not her thing, but she does them. And, she did one on accountability versus punishment. And I was like, oh my God, I'm the queen of punishment. Like, if, somebody did something I thought was wrong, I'm just going to like, how do we make them pay? Like things like, I was like, wow, like this is really bad. Like, why do I do this? And like, I can think about like the childhood psychological aspect of why I do it, but it also doesn't make anything better. It makes the person feel like shit. I'm all pissy, and there's no accountability. So it's like accountability versus punishment when it comes to dealing with employees. And
how do you keep people accountable?
Well, so what she says is it's about counting for their ability. Like, if there's something that you want them to do and they do not do it, then it's your job to account, like, hey, that you were supposed to do this thing, you didn't do it. What were like the barriers? How are you going to not ever do it again? And then allow them to either earn their way into like the effective execution of that position, or earn their way out.
Yeah, or also how can you assist them in being accountable? What didn't they have?
Right.
What can you give them? Maybe it's a checklist.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a calendar. Maybe it's a tool or resource.
Right.
Like, why didn't this happen? If it doesn't happen, it's not F you effed up.
I know,
like,
I'm
not.
pissed.
Don't talk to me for a week.
Yeah,
it's like, well, what happened?
Yeah.
You know, like, and how can I make sure this doesn't happen again? And how can we collectively? What do I need to give you?
Yeah.
Right.
Another thought that I do have as well is the idea that, and this kind of ties into that accountability piece, the idea that you don't get attached to employees, because if you do, then it's a lot harder to hold them accountable.
Yeah.
And I'm the worst at getting attached to employees.
Well, there's a lot to that too, and it's weird because you develop. It's more than just. It's not just transactional,
right?
You know, it is a relationship. But they actually, I ate a bunch of chips when you walked away. But they addressed this in the 10-year plan. David Dressler, one of the co-founders of Tender Green, addresses this idea where he was being coached by Danny Meyer, one of his investors, and they were talking about employees are like bark. Sometimes, you know, a tree sheds its bark, and sometimes the tree, in order for the tree to grow, it has to shed bark.
Yeah.
Sometimes people would help you get to a certain point, but if they're not the right person to help you get to the next point, you know, it's time to talk to that person. If you can't get us here, maybe we can find another spot for you in the organization, but you being in this position right now is holding us back from the next step. As I say that, what goes through your mind?
I mean, I just totally resonate with that. And it was because I'm in their age group. It was a lot of people became my friends, and that was like a big mistake, like not having the boundaries to be like, I want to hang out with you all the time. I think you're awesome, but we're not friends. That was really, really, really hard. And then when people would leave, I would like freak the fuck out. Like, oh my God, like they're betraying me.
How could you do this to me?
I know, so bad. And like, it was so emotionally heavy in a way that was not appropriate. And I like really regret a lot of it. And I would call my friend Dina, who owns Rosso Blue and Superfine, which are in LA. And I would be like crying to her, like, oh my God, blah, blah, blah's leaving. What do I do? And she's like, people leave. Like, you have to. It was really hard for me, though. And because I was so afraid of them leaving, I couldn't hold them accountable because I was like, well, I don't want to upset them. I don't want to make them feel like I'm attacking them. And then when it would build up and it would burst because like that was so frustrated at the thing, it was punishment, not accountability anymore. And, you know, a lot of like friends I lost because I wasn't able to create that boundary, and I wasn't able to differentiate when is it appropriate to be accountable and when am I just punishing somebody, which is not appropriate to do in the workplace. And that is, it's really been a lesson that since maybe in the last like 6-7 months I've learned intensely.
So how do you get from that area of, how do you transition from friend, coworker, besties to admiration, but you're an employee? Like, how do you go through that? But like, you just like fire everyone who was a good friend and you start over? Like, how did you create that buffer, that layer between you? And
I mean, honestly, we had like this, like mass exodus, and one of my best friends of like 15 years was our director of operations, and it just didn't go well. And it was a good point in 2021 where a lot of the managers really left because it just was too toxic, honestly. And I contributed greatly to that.
It was a stressful time.
Yeah, it was stressful, and I hadn't learned. I mean, and I know it's like, oh, you've learned a lesson like so quickly. Like, no, I had to. Like, that lesson bitch slapped the fuck out of me like 5 times in a row. Like, there was no option to not learn because I'd never want to go through. My biggest piece of advice is really avoid hiring friends, because there are people out there that are not your friends, that you don't want to risk losing, that you can do the same thing with, and you'll be able to hold them accountable in a way that's better for them and for you, honestly. Yeah.
Last chance, anything we have not discussed up to this point that you want to get out?
Oh, let me think. I don't think so, but then... Is there something you want to know?
Well, I'm going to wrap up with 2 questions. So
okay.
The first question is this idea of we're trying to inspire, empower, and transform the industry. That's our mission statement. So 1, how have you transformed? Who are you today versus the woman you were when you first got into this industry?
Oh my God, I'm such a different person. I have to tell you, like, I've always been like a little bit, I don't know, like arrogant, I think. And this industry humbles the shit out of you because like you have to deal with so many different people for so long. And it's like, you can't just be like, I know it all, I got it all, because you don't. And like this industry, when so many people are coming in and out your doors on the employee side and on the customer side, there's just no way that, you know what I mean? Like you can be the same. Yeah. And then also like, this shit's hard.
Yeah. It's really hard.
Yeah. So it's not easy to be like, I figured it all out. Don't worry, guys, I got this, because some type of curveball is going to come. COVID is going to happen. A bunch of employees are going to get pissed at you and they're going to leave. Like you're going to have a bad month and you're going to piss people off and they're going to leave for that reason. Like just, it could be the avocado prices go up. Like there's just always something that's fucking slapping the shit out of you. And like, definitely it has humbled me a lot, because I think if I was like some hedge fund corporate something, I would be such a douche. So the restaurant industry has really done.
Ever since I told you it was okay to swear, you've been
I know.
just ripping them. I love it. No, it's fine.
I swear a lot in normal life, so I was like, yeah.
So now we have understood how you've transformed. You're much more humble now. What do you think the industry needs for change? Like if one thing needs to change about the industry to continue to move in the right direction, what is that change our industry needs?
I think that we need to stand up a little bit more for, I want to say like the brokenness of this industry, because we have trained our guests to expect like, how much food can I get for how cheap? And what that causes, I mean, it causes breakdowns in so many levels. On the vendor level, from an environmental standpoint, you're not able to pay your staff well because you're just trying to like have that perceived value. And I think if everybody in our industry really like came together to agree to like, you know what, no, we need to charge what we're worth, and
yes.
like not use like the shittiest product so we can just like drive that price down, that could really change the way that like guests won't be like, oh man, I'm not gonna pay $6 for a taco.
You have 50 years where we realized that it's all about the bottom line and managing the numbers, and what corner can we cut to like expedite and streamline process and to do it faster and cheaper, and that compounds and compounds and compounds and compounds until we're eating cardboard and like literal, there's like horrible stuff for us, you know. And then the consumer goes, oh, this is bad, we want quality. Okay, well, guess what, that comes at a price. 100%. But we've conditioned people to say this is what a burger costs, $3
or a taco,
or a taco $1. Like that's not food,
right?
You know, and we can't deliver on your needs, your requests, your desires, and maintain those prices. And we can't attract to ourselves good people, dependable people,
right?
With selling food for $1.
Yeah.
I think it comes down to a cultural shift that has to happen with society. And I think that the restaurant industry is going to lead that cultural shift. Yeah. Because we have influence and we have ears. Yeah. So by ears, I mean the ears of the consumer, of the general public. We can make change. Yeah.
And I think, I mean, I certainly grew up in a household where it was like, how much can you eat for how little money?
Yeah.
And that's just so fucked up. So it's like, well, we're all like kind of fat, right? And then also it's so bad for the environment, the amount that we're just consuming, the amount of food waste that there is.
What is it, like 50% of all the food that we produce
in the
gets
US,
thrown away?
Yeah.
And food production accounts for 98% of all the world pollution.
Yeah.
What the fuck are we doing?
Yeah. And also educating, I mean, it all starts with like young people, like educating them on like, it's not just potatoes, lettuce, cabbage, you know, tomatoes, like the basic things that everyone eats, because we need to be planting more dynamic kind of variety of fruits and vegetables, because some things take nitrogen out of the soil, some things put it back in. Like there's like a Dan Barber book about this.
Oh yeah. The third plate.
Yeah. And it's like that, you know, I didn't grow up eating anything. I would come home, this is a little story, but I'd come home from school and I would get like iceberg lettuce, and then like my mom would buy these bags of cheese from Costco and Thousand Island, and I would eat that, and my mom would be like, wow, you're so healthy eating a salad. But it was like iceberg lettuce, cheese, and 1,000 like dressed in Thousand Island. Yeah. But like we just didn't
they didn't know better.
Yeah. Like
my parents are the same way.
Yeah.
Like, that generation, it's not their fault. It's just the world of what is it? Just commercial, consumerism.
Mm-hmm.
They are the children of consumerism.
100%.
You know, and they came up in that world, like in that time from like the 30s to like the basically 2007 when like the smartphone came out. Like a handful of people controlled the message.
Yeah.
And those people were the billionaires that controlled the media outlets that also had a stake in other businesses, and they were just trying to. They control the message. It's all people knew. 100%. So you can't blame the people that came before us, but we have to start to recognize like that type of convenience and like value comes at a cost.
100%.
And it's catching up to us, you know?
And like, I mean, I find at GoGo's, you know, we pay $17 an hour. We pay for medical insurance 100%. We charge $3 a taco, and people are like so upset. But it's like, I can't do it. And I literally can't do it for cheaper unless I get, they sell like taco meat, which is like commodity meat. And it's just like the, you know, ends or whatever. But I don't want to sell that.
But we also have to educate the other restaurant owners to help them realize that if we're going to change this industry, we need to buckle arms, stand shoulder to shoulder, and inject integrity back into what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
And it has to be a group effort because the consumer is just going to go to the path of least resistance. They're going to find the cheap stuff.
Yeah.
And I think it has to be a group effort. But I've loved this conversation. We're going to take one more quick break to thank our sponsors, and we'll be right back to bust out a true speed round. We're back. And the first question I have for you is, what is your it factor, a habit, a trait, a characteristic you most believe contributes to your success?
I think I just like go for it.
Nice. What is your biggest weakness?
Oh, I'm cocky.
Oh, I was going to say just going for it.
No.
How do you overcome
my
that
ego? Therapy.
There you go. What is one question you ask or thing you look for during the interview process when you're growing your team?
About flexibility. I'm always looking for people that are flexible and like ready to go with the punches.
Nice. What is your biggest challenge today?
Oh, fuck. Growing up while owning a restaurant.
How are you overcoming that?
Really listening to advice and people and employees and everything.
I love it. Share one code of conduct or behavior you teach your team, a core value, a way to be.
Yeah, having grace. That's a big one because like life is hard. We all know this. You just have to have grace for one another and understand that like not everyone's out to get you.
What's grace?
Grace is it's like what Jesus talks about, but it's like it's just having space for people to mess up and to feel like they're not going to be punished, and to offer forgiveness or to understand that like, damn, that person must be going through it if they did that thing.
Yeah.
And I need to tell myself that every day because sometimes I be like crazy.
Yeah. What is one uncommon standard of service you teach your team? So something that's common throughout your restaurants, but not common throughout the industry to go above and beyond.
I think we teach them to be individuals so that like, you know, if they can share about themselves, wear what they want, like just be a little funky. So, cause it allows for people to feel like they're like really a part of something and not just like, hello, welcome.
Yeah. What is one book that's a must read to make us a better person or a restaurant owner?
This is an obvious one to me, but it's 1 Minute Manager, the new 1 Minute Manager. Yeah. I love that book.
What's one lesson from that book?
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good question. I think guiding people to solve their own problems, like if you set them up with all the information and when they come to you with questions, you guide them to solve their own problems by like asking questions rather than being like, I'm just going to do it, move. Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah. What is one thing you feel restaurateurs don't do well enough or often enough?
I think advocate and, you know, for the way that politics are set up and policy and things like that. So many policies affect us and we don't advocate for ourselves.
Yeah, we kind of just exist in this world and let the world happen to us instead of becoming active and like voting and knowing what that's going to
voting, talking to your local representative. Yeah, 100%. Yep.
Name one service you've hired or outsourced, something that you recognize you don't do great, but you can find somebody who does it way better, and together you're all better.
Accounting. I used to do it all myself because that's what I did. And I recently gave it away in 2021, and oh my God, it's amazing.
Who did you give it to?
They're called Stanley Price CPA. They work in LA with only restaurants, and they're so cool. Stanley Price.
Like STANLY or
LEY, yeah.
LEY?
Yeah, Price, yeah.
And what is one technology you've recently implemented in your business that's had a huge impact on communication, efficiency, profitability, anything along those lines?
Slack, probably communication. Everyone's all about Slack these days.
And how are you using Slack?
We use it just to keep all of our water hose of information organized, because people always have thoughts and ideas all day, and it's like I can't handle.
Slack is free, by the way.
Yeah.
You know,
I don't know
a certain level of it's free.
Yeah.
Eventually you have to pay.
We have not had to pay. How do they make their money? I don't know.
Bigger companies that need, I think the more people you add, the more features you unlock, that's where but they get you with the free.
Yeah.
And then they're like, we got you. And then as you grow,
like
you move into other features.
Yeah. I was like, is this data mining or something?
The freemium, I'm sure there's that too.
Yeah. That's fine. I'm okay with
They
that.
have your contact information. You're basically giving them now that you're in the system.
Yeah.
You know, this is the last question, by the way. Get ready for it.
Ready.
If you got the news, you'd be leaving this world tomorrow. All the memories of you, your work, and your restaurants would be lost with your departure, with the exception of 3 pieces of wisdom that you could leave behind for the good of humanity and for your legacy. What would those 3 pieces of wisdom be?
Do people really answer these questions that
Hell
fast?
Yeah.
Okay. Sheesh. Have grace.
Have grace. 1.
Yeah. Exercise.
2.
And just because you get a lot of it for cheap doesn't mean it's good.
3. I've loved this conversation. Thank you so much, Brittney.
Yeah.
We wrap up every chat by calling somebody out.
Yes.
Who do you respect and admire? And if you found out they were a guest on the show tomorrow, you'd be like, I'm tuning into that.
Yeah. Dina Sampson from Rosso Blue, for sure. She was like, her life story is amazing. She was like a hedge fund person, and then she quit that and was like P. Diddy's chief of staff, and then quit that and then married a chef, and they owned a restaurant called Soto, and now Rosso Blue and Superfine. So, and she's a mother of twins. I don't know how she
Do you
does
know her?
I know her really well.
Ooh, make that introduction.
Yeah,
girl.
she's also the founding member of one of the founding members of Regarding Her. She's amazing. She's really amazing.
Dina, look out. I'm coming after you. I'd love to get you on the show. And if we want to connect with you, what's the best way to connect?
Through Instagram at Brittney Valles, or email. Do I say my email?
You can.
Brittney at GorillaTacos.com.
It's up to you. And did I say your name wrong?
Valles.
Oh,
but it's
my
okay.
God.
It's fine.
I'm so horrible.
No.
I usually ask before every interview if I'm saying names. All right, you were great. Thank you so
thank
much.
you. Thank you for having me.
There is no questioning. You are.
Yes.
Unstoppable.
Okay, there we go.